So today I'm talking to Roderick Cameron from Boardroom Advisors. Roddy's been an advisor for the last 15 years, working with small, medium and fast-growing businesses. He's got a background as a legal and legal expertise, but he's not your typical lawyer. He's got a great business development history there as well. So Roddy, over to you. Great to have you with us today. Why don't you give us a bit of background of yourself, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Thanks for the invitation, Daryl. Very quickly, my product history, I was a lawyer in my first career, and I've seen deals and M&A from the legal perspective. I've run communications campaigns for big IPOs and M&A and cross-border, including working on the Betfair IPO of 1.3 billion at the time. So I really understand at the macro level what the dynamics are around valuations and deal processes. And that's really helped in the last 10 years or so in around the SME space, helping people as they go on that growth journey, either to build their business for their income, but typically it always makes sense to focus on have a plan for an exit and be building valuation towards the exit. And that's been across a range of sectors, actually even into, as you say, fast scaling businesses. I worked in a fintech as strategy officer for the last couple of years. That's quite an interesting experience being back in that pace environment. So quite a broad range of experiences.
Great. So it sounds like you've got, like as you say, broad experience across multiple industries and also multiple sizes of businesses, yeah. From the startup. So have you found any differences? What differences have you found between the various industries and I guess stages of the journey that businesses are on?
I think the similarity is that every business thinks it's special and unique in its own way. And the frank truth is, of course you are. Of course you're special and unique on your journey, but you're also in a big world with lots of other people at businesses at the same stage and typically hitting the same problems. And the problems do tend to be always in that bucket of management, of managing the human relations. Yes, it's difficult to build a big power station and these big capital intensive businesses, but most businesses, it's all around how you manage and unlock the potential of your people, or indeed inhibit the potential of your people. So if I just talk through some clear, there's stages of growth where it's clear an extra layer of management comes in. Yeah. So if and that's from as basic as just hiring your first person is really difficult if you're a solopreneur. Just getting that right often doesn't work.
Exactly.
Particularly because it's one income stream, and suddenly you've got to feed two mouths and not one.
Well, when you're a one-man band and your first hire, you've just doubled your employees. Whereas when you've got 10 people and you hire another one, you only increase your headcount by 10%. So that first one's always a toughie.
The first one is a toughie, and if you can get through those first 1, 2, 3, typically you've got tight little groups, quite efficient actually, because you're all within reach. Everyone knows what everyone's doing, and then quite quickly you get to the stage where there's just too many conversations in the room. We've always talked about that being 7's quite an ugly number for that, but it can be a bit more, a bit less, but certainly for one person to be running. In a big corporation, we're running 12 reports is slightly crazy. I know a lot of businesses now try and flatten out that way, and I can't, for the world of me, get the logic behind that, because it's just the number of conversational loops going on becomes very difficult. So that next layer of having hired the first person and grown the team is that next point, is that real stepping up point, which is actually I need someone else to help me manage. Someone else to take that responsibility, someone to actually take all of that off my hands, and ideally be better at it than I am.
Sure. And what's your experience as to the best time or the best number of people of when you need to introduce that next management person or that next layer? If you're bringing employees in, I'm guessing the first employees are you're their boss effectively, and you're asking them to help you out with typically the stuff you don't like doing. But where's that point? Is there a tipping point when you need to introduce a management layer?
And every industry has slightly different needs and staffing and fractional ownership and all the rest. But if you look at the statistics, very few businesses get to £1 million of turnover.
Yeah.
Very, very few make it through. The pyramid, if you like, is incredibly flat in terms of size of revenue of business. And I think one of the reasons for that is if you take a rule of thumb of somewhere between 80 and 120,000 per head. So let's make the maths really easy for me, my homeschooling maths teacher. At 100,000 a head, well, at $1 million, you've probably got 10-ish employees. So it is around that 10, 12 people that those conversations start to get a little difficult unless you've really worked on breaking that down. If you've got 12 direct reports, you're in trouble. And so people tend to run with that, and some of them up to 15, 16, and that's where balls start getting dropped, and growth can get a bit stuck. So around that 8 to 15, I know it's quite a loose parameter, but there's a definite physical sense in the business from knowing what everyone's doing every day, and suddenly you just can't cope with it all.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting point, Roddy. So are you suggesting that there's some sort of correlation between that flexible 8 to 16 number of people in the business and the fact that so many businesses don't get past £1 million in revenue?
Yes, I think that's whether you think of it in terms of the number of people, or think in terms of the revenue. There's a barrier to growth.
Yeah.
There's some sort of ceiling in place, which could simply be around the ability to communicate with that many people and hold that many thoughts in one person, the boss, the founder's head. It's that someone described it as the let go gap.
I haven't heard that one.
Because the founder, she knows everything about the business. She's done every job, and so just the ability for her to let that go can be quite tough and inhibiting on the business's growth.
Yeah, that definitely agrees with what I've experienced in working with those businesses. So if a business gets past £1 million in revenue, and the owner or owners can implement a management structure to fill that gap, that let go gap, and they do it with a structure rather than just because what happens so often, I was talking to someone the other day, is they just go, hey, look, I need a marketing manager. Yeah, you've been a marketing manager before, go and do it. And they don't give them any structure, they don't give them any process, they just, it's not delegation, it's abdication. And they just walk away, and 6 months later they go, well, they're doing a terrible job, and get rid of them. And so they go, well, this whole delegation mark doesn't work. What's the magic pill to be able to make this work? And they just keep going, bouncing between 1 and 1.5 million revenue until they figure out how that they set up a structure and delegate, but still maintain control. And to maintain control through systems and processes and the right sort of reporting.
Yeah. So often what we see isn't delegating, is it? It's dumping.
Well, yeah, dumping, abdicating.
There you go. Have all that. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't work it out.
Systems and processes can feel like quite heavy words at that stage in a business's growth, but it's so essential that just to get things written down. No one's talking about building out massive libraries or whatever the digital equivalent is of the groaning shelf, but you've got to start to get that stuff committed down as a process is simply a list of 10 numbered bullet points. It could be as simple as that.
Yeah, checklists even.
Checklists, all those things, rather than carrying stuff around in the head and rather than making assumptions, because your assumptions can always be checked, because someone can just say, I was thinking about doing this, and they'll stick their head around the door. Well, if you've got 10, 12, 14 people, they can't all be sticking their head around the door all the time. It's just, you've got to work out, this is how we do things down here. Get it clear, get it agreed, get it understood. And then you've got a much better chance of making that delegation back to that delegation in sort of empowerment, which is, this is what needs done. Go do it your own special way.
Yeah. So we've gone pretty quickly straight to the point that I guess it's all about the leadership and the ability of the owners to lead and manage and delegate are key factors in their ability to be able to grow a business sustainably. How have you found that across industry sectors? Is that the same in all industries that you've worked with it?
Yes, and listen, it varies by degree, but typically there is a point at which the founder just has to let go. It's very unusual to find someone, right, employee number one, I'm going to get everyone down, make sure it's all organised and hand it off and be clear in my division of responsibilities. It doesn't happen that way. Things are just moving too quickly. It's all too organic. But there also comes a point where the visitor wakes up and goes, whoa, just too much. So my experience is definitely that businesses do get stuck, for want of a better word, and that stuckness often relates to the lack of trust that the founder has, not in the quality of their people, because they've hired them, but the trust in their own ability to let go and just recognize they can't be everywhere all the time doing everything. Yeah.
So it's a bit like being a parent and allowing your kids to find their own freedoms and make their own mistakes.
Well, it's a lot of the similar journey, isn't it?
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've I guess dwelled a little bit on the leadership as being one of the key things that allow businesses to get through that growth cycle and to a successful exit. What are some of the things you've seen in businesses that have worked really well that enable business owners to thrive and achieve their ultimate end game, which is get out of their business and maximize their value? Because business owners have always got this dilemma of balancing, how do I maximize the value for me, but at the same time I really want to look after my employees, the people that help me get there. How do I look after them and perhaps leave a legacy? What thoughts and experiences have you got around those?
Well, I think if we just focus particularly on the role of the owner-founder, it's that thing about the blessing and the curse of a really strong owner-founder, because they will drag the business forwards and drag everyone with them. But in terms of the value they create to leave that legacy, if they haven't, if an investor or a buyer or a funder comes in and looks at that business without the owner-founder, if you take that resource out, what are you really left with if there's no, if the business is being dragged forward by that person? And there's a time for that. There's a time to go and the founder go knock down doors and make things happen. Yeah. But to build sustainability into the business, and this is probably, again, you talk about the stages, often think about, is it 3 million revenue and up that a business becomes truly sustainable? Because at that point, there's enough slack in the system, if you like, to withstand the loss of a single key employee or a single big customer, or typically one of those shocks in a less organized business or a less spread business can knock it right the way backwards from before you're up to 3 million. At 3 million, to get there, you've always had to organize yourself. You've always had to say, actually, I can't be responsible for everything. And so getting that scheme of delegation sounds rather grand, doesn't it? Right. But just agreeing those checklists, the way we do things around here. It's the old stuff. Popped in my inbox the other day. Someone was lauding the E-Myth, the Gerber book, which has been around forever. And obviously the other voice in my ear, which is, and he went bust twice, right? So, but the bit to take from that is his thing was write it down, get it organized, get it manualized, and it's not difficult nowadays. You don't have to. His day was probably working on a word processor, whereas now, whether it's it is using kind of the A4 manual, or if it is using Evernote and Google Docs and Trainual's a new one I saw from the States. I mean, there's endless solutions now just to organize your thinking and get those repeatable processes down that allow people to step in and take that responsibility.
Yeah. I think it was Gerber's mantra that said, build a franchise prototype, even if you have no intention of franchising it, which is, I think it's a great mindset to be in.
Yes.
Yeah. And Roddy, you mentioned that a business, once they get to about 3 mil revenue mark, to achieve 3 mil, they really have to have got to the stage where they've pushed through the stage where they just, to reach 3 mil, they can't be dependent on key people or the owner or anyone in the business. They have to have got through that stage where it's not dependent upon just any one person, is dependent on multiple people. And hopefully they're doing it the same way, as opposed to a whole lot of key people, which could now all be doing it their own way. And you've got silos in your business. Okay, so there's a couple of tips. So everything so far is we've talked about. It really fits on what I would call the cultural side of the business, in terms of the values, our leadership, our communication style. Interesting that nothing's come up around the industry we're in, or the products we're selling, or even the database or CRM that we're using as being key factors for success and pushing through to a successful exit. What's your experience on learning what we need to have in place to boost our valuations?
Well, I think once we're now in that run up, so the next barrier tends to be around say a 15 million pound turnover. So we think we're in that space. We've got through the 1 million and we're pushing up that next size of business.
Yep.
Which is, I like to think of as being, you've grown all the way up to being a big small business before you flip into being a small big business. And that takes a lot of work. But in this space, that repeatability of what you do is what you're looking for. That's why you write things down. That's why you train and have processes and hopefully almost feedback loops of the constant improvement that you're looking for. So those systems now, from a valuation perspective, and for touching on tech stacks and all that great stuff, it's simply an investor is really looking to see, is there effectively a machine there that will predictably give me a cash flow or a return, and how reliable will that be? And the reliability goes back to those minimal key person risks.
Yep.
So it's that, well, actually, if someone wasn't there, could you replace them easily and get moving? Does someone have all the knowledge in their head? And therefore, when you think systems, it's that how to do things, getting that recorded. But increasingly, and we've seen this over the COVID period, is when you don't have the luxury of lots of bodies around and you're all sharing an office, how does technology come into play? And if you look around now, if I was scouting the tech space, what we're starting to see is every aspect of a business now almost has a tech stack sitting behind it. Now we're used to hearing about Xero has been one of the great success stories. I'm on QuickBooks, don't like it very much, but that's what my accountant likes me to use.
Xero, I think you're an accountant.
Well, perhaps. But that manages accounts really well in the way that maybe even 3 or 4 years ago, once a quarter, used to kind of put things in a black bag and send it to your accountant. Well, now between these accounting platforms and receipt banks where you photograph receipts and things that monitor your travel expenses, all that's buttoned down. In sales, that's all buttoned down now. So the Salesforce or Pipedrive or whichever system you're using, even down to email, little Mixmax and Calendly, all these things. Actually, do I need someone running my diary? I'm pretty much there today. Things that have saved me time. So all the way across, you're starting to look at technical systems that maximize that efficiency and repeatability. So as we all know, any technical system really only as good as the training that goes with it. So you're back to that human bit. So I tend to think of those all in that bucket of how tech is enabling those human management systems.
Yeah. So we need good technology backgrounds and support systems. And what I'm hearing you say is that we need to be all using them the same way. So I think you mentioned training a couple of times there, going, hey, it's only good if we're trained to use it and we're all using it the same way. So technology is absolutely a given nowadays.
Yeah.
What about the marketing or let's call it sales, routes to market, digital, social? Do they make a difference?
Well, it's been the only way to market for the last 3 months, isn't it? Everything's online.
Yeah.
I was on a sort of webinar about European retail and tech impacts, and they're just saying things aren't just moving online; they're moving to app. Everything's around the phone now. Now, in your digital natives, so you're under 30s, of course it's there. But what we're seeing through this process of having to educate grandparents on how to use Zoom, probably on a mobile phone, or is that this whole, the digital immigrants like of my generation are now having to get much more comfortable with using technology in different ways. So that's what the market's moving to and is, then not having that capability in your business, not having understood how to reach your markets digitally, having adjusted your sales processes, and there's a lot going on now of learning from fairly Silicon Valley SaaS businesses, which on the one hand are, there's a whole bucket of evil around that whole unicorn chasing thing. But what they have really developed is, they call them predictable revenue systems. And they've really taken the pipeline, extended that out. They've got metrics in every way. They split what they call outbound from inbound. So they have people just phoning out into their market, having very light touch conversations, just working out if there's a need, and qualifying the whole time. And likewise on the inbound, people specifically saying, if we've got content, so everyone has to be on social media now. You are on Google, like it or not. It doesn't mean you've got to share pictures of what you've just had for lunch, but building up that community on the right thing, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever the right place is for you, that all goes to draw your community in and draw in ideally to your website or some point where they want to come to you. Some will want to come to you and and they're pre-sold. So treat them accordingly, help them on their journey. Others are going out and need to get to know you, and you also need to not waste time by getting to know ones that are never going to buy. So much more emphasis on qualification. A lot going on in that predictable sales, predictable revenue system world, and frankly, a lot of resources available out there to understand that.
Yeah. So the more we make our revenue predictable, the more reliable and transparent it is, and effectively de-risking it from a buyer's perspective. If what they're buying is certainty of future income and cash flow, the more we can put that in place, the more valuable our business will be.
Indeed, and it is a piece of transition. It's not, but what it also gives you is, if you move into that more measured process, and the clues in the word measuring is that you've got these indicators, you've got these measures. So when you come to demonstrate this is how my business makes money, you can start to link that. So, well, I know if that number's at 30 and that number's at 60, then at the end of the month, I'm going to have 50. And you start to build confidence in the quality of that system, the quality of your business machine.
Yeah. So we're talking about businesses, getting them ready, gearing them up so that the business owners can maximize their life's work and get the most from it, and ultimately leave when they want and how they want. And sometimes we refer to that as leaving on their terms. So, they're on their front foot rather than the back foot. So, what a number of things we see is that the businesses don't have their finances in order. So, given your legal background, where I'm curious to see your experience around the corporate governance side as well, and just the legal documentation that so many small business owners really don't have in place. Any thoughts or tips you can share with us there for business owners who are thinking that they might want to be getting ready in the next couple of years? What's the legal sort of stuff they need to really have nailed down?
Well, one of the key learnings I've had over the last 10 years is that investors think of risk first before the reward, whereas business managers and founders and entrepreneurs, they're all, well, it's all about the reward and the risk will sort of take care of themselves. And it's just a very different mindset, different perspective.
So true.
So in terms of kind of looking at how easily to demonstrate that you've taken steps to reduce risks in the business are simple things from regularly recording your decisions. And that's almost getting into, as soon as you can, into that rhythm of once a month having your formal management meeting if it's not a formal board, but making sure that you've considered and decided, what are you going to do, what have you done, and what are you going to do better. But get that written down as a record so people can understand why those decisions were made at the time and that those decisions contributed, and they can match them across the financial performance. On the financials, you've just got to have that quality of information that demonstrates beyond the year-end accounts, because that doesn't really tell you much at all. How good are your management numbers? What do you run the business by, and are you robust in demonstrating that? Can your accounting package deliver that, or does your accountant need to help you deliver that?
Yeah.
And are you using your accountant in the right way? I think it's a very interesting conversation to have with your accountant as you approach a sale process. And you certainly don't want to be doing this in the weeks up. This is something to be thinking about a couple of years, 3 years ahead, which is when I come to that table, who do I want sitting with me to support me through that? And an accountant is a key part of assembling that advisory team to present your business in its best light and ensure that the risks have been worked through and thought through.
Yeah, so part of that business history, sometimes I think of it as like a logbook, but that business history is often, we revert to the financials. We've got the financial history of the business. But what I hear you suggesting is, hey, let's provide some context around that, what led to that financial history and the decisions that we were making ahead of time that led to those financial outcomes. So tracking the journey. So we're just providing context around the numbers.
Yeah.
Love it.
This is specific to the stage that a business is at, or the size of it. So again, what's appropriate? It might just be a simple one page once a week or once a month, right the way up to, actually, if you're running a £15 million turnover business, you probably want to have a really good rhythm of quarterly board meetings and an offsite every year, just to really manage through that and have those decisions thought through clearly and the records from one to the next. And
documented, as you say, to show that history. Hey, Roddy, that's brilliant. So I'm going to leave you with just one last question. So given, and clearly you could talk all day about what we need to do to make a business more valuable, and it would be a fascinating conversation. But I'm going to try and nail you down to just one thing. What's the one thing you would love people to take away from this conversation to help them on their exit journey?
The biggest value reducer, the biggest obstacle to achieving a full valuation is the risk that people attach to the owner, founder, being in the middle of everyone. If you can't step away from your business for 3 months and that business continue happily, then an investor's not going to pay you the price you want for your business. That's the one thing you can, if you look through that lens, that will really help you adjust everything else around your business. So making sure the business isn't totally reliant on you as the owner, the founder, or founders of the business. Yeah. So step away as much as you can, and I'm sure that the business owners out there would love the idea of, hey, let me just take 3 months holiday every year. Yeah, and most entrepreneurs go and invest in new business. Yeah, brilliant. Hey, thanks, Roddy. That's fantastic. I'll put your details in the notes for the podcast. Great talking to you today. Appreciate your time. As ever, Daryl. Great fun. Cheers. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. Cheers.